Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. In this video, I am going to discuss an objection to stacking silver that I often hear from the prepping crowd, namely that you cannot eat silver. And while this is obviously true, I think there are still plenty of good reasons for stacking, not the least of which is to have some hard money and a means of trade and exchange in the event that the proverbial crap does hit the fan. And I'll be covering that and more reasons to stack silver for SHTF in just a few minutes, so stick around. In the same vein, we'll also be doing a little thought experiment to see just how long 100 ounces of physical silver could keep you and your family alive, and why stacking at least that much silver might be a good idea. So stick around, it's going to be a great video, let's get to it. So one common objection to stacking silver that I hear a lot is that you can't eat silver. And this seems like such an obvious statement that I find the objection a little ridiculous. There's tons of things you can't do with silver. You can't have a conversation with it, for example. You can't burn it for heat. If you're falling from a great height, it doesn't make a very good parachute. But for some reason, many people seem to be stuck on pointing out the fact that you cannot eat silver. And in their minds, this somehow means you shouldn't be stacking it at all. The image, of course, that this statement conjures up is that when society collapses and law and order break down, you'll be stuck holding a nice stack of silver while you slowly starve to death. Now, there's lots of reasons to own silver that don't involve a catastrophic end-of-the-world scenario, although, in my opinion, it's not such a bad thing to have for that either. So let's just focus on that for a moment. Now, people who raise this objection are missing a pretty obvious point, and that's that you can, of course, just stack some food in addition to your silver. And I'm going to tell you a few reasons why I really think you should have both, and how even in a post-apocalyptic scenario, silver would still be a useful thing to have around. But first, I want to do a quick thought experiment with you. Because while one reason we may want to stack silver is so that we can still have some shiny metal money in a Mad Max post-apocalyptic world, there's another much more certain threat that we face that stacking silver is equally applicable to combating. And that is the erosion of the purchasing power of our currency. See, even if society and the economy chug along business as usual for a long time into the future, one thing that's baked into the cake is inflation. The Fed even openly sets an inflation target and aims to hit it through their implementation of monetary policy. If there's not enough inflation, they'll make sure that we get some, one way or the other. And this is no secret. It seems like the Fed chair mentions inflation targets almost every time he or she speaks. So the title of this little thought experiment is, how long can 100 ounces of silver keep you alive? And basically, I just want to take a look at the price of something critical to survival, feeding your family, in today's dollars, and we'll compare that to the spot price of silver, and see how long 100 ounces of silver can keep you and your family fed today. And the idea is that if food prices are rising a lot due to inflation, silver should be rising as well. And so in the future, even with significantly higher food prices, one could expect 100 ounces of silver to still be capable of feeding you for roughly the same amount of time. Now, of course, I know that's a huge assumption. The price of silver and the price of food are not perfectly correlated, and one might rise a lot faster than the other for a variety of reasons. But just for fun, let's take a look at the numbers and find out. Oh, and by the way, what you're looking at here is 100 ounces of silver, so you can use that in this thought experiment for reference. And yeah, I know, these colorized eagles are a little goofy. I think it's kind of an odd thing when people try to superimpose another image on top of a coin. Just strike a new coin with the image that you want. But I picked these up from my local coin shop a while ago, and they sold them to me at spot, so picking up some silver eagles at spot is never a bad idea, even if they aren't the best looking coins. So how long can 100 ounces of silver keep you alive? Well, according to the most recent guidance by the USDA, a bare-bones food plan that will meet a family of four's nutritional needs will run about $150 per week. In the same study, The most liberal food plan for a family of 4 was $300 a week, but this thought experiment is about how long 100 ounces of silver can keep your family alive, not how long it can keep it eating yummy snacks and ribeyes, so we'll go with the lower number. And by the way, I'm so glad we've got the USDA out there spending our tax dollars for us figuring this stuff out. I wonder how much they spent figuring out what a family's food budget should be. But regardless, since we've already paid for this study with our tax dollars and future debt obligations, at least we can use the information and extrapolate a few conclusions from it. And at the time I'm recording this video, the spot price of silver is about $26. So if we take the spot price, and yeah, I know physical bullion right now is selling for a bit higher than the spot price, but for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to go with the spot price for now. If we take that and multiply it by 100, we get $2,600. So $2,600 divided by $150 per week, and we can see that 100 ounces of silver today will feed a family of 4 for roughly 17 weeks. And I think we can go ahead and just round up and call it 5 months, because we're truly just talking about survival here, not living high on the hog and eating super well. So that's how long 100 ounces of silver can feed you and your family, now, and possibly in a future of rising food prices. I was talking recently to a family member of mine who is from Venezuela, and the subject of their hyperinflation came up. I brought up how precious metals can be used as a hedge against inflation, and she told me some stories of relatives who had gotten by in part by selling some of their gold jewelry. And so these family members she's telling me about, they would sell their jewelry for US dollars, and then use the dollars to purchase food or necessities on the black market, because the government-run stores always just had bare shelves. And although the gold did allow them to buy some food and things they needed, the real prices of food had risen quite a bit due to shortages, so their dollars still didn't go very far. And there was one story in particular that was somewhat illuminating. One family member had gone to sell his fancy 18-karat gold Rolex, and the buyer had only offered him about 1/5 of what he had paid for it. Basically, the buyer was only interested in the gold content, not the fact that it was a luxury watch. And so the guy had to take this massive haircut on this quote-unquote investment in this Rolex. And my family member, the one telling me this story, seems to think that this story supports an argument to not buy gold or precious metals. And my response to her was that this story is an argument not to invest in watches, and that if this guy had just gone and bought gold coins or bars or silver coins or bars instead of that Rolex, he would have gotten back his money and then some, instead of getting hosed like he did. So anyway, there's a lesson to be learned somewhere in that story, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. And if you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a quick thumbs up. It helps spread the information, and I really appreciate it. My takeaway from hearing these experiences in Venezuela is that if you really want food security for yourself and your family, your best bet is definitely to stockpile some food, in addition to your precious metals. Whether you stack up 5-gallon buckets with Mylar bags full of rice, Mountain House freeze-dried food, or your standard military MREs, everyone's needs are different. You definitely want to have some food security in addition to your silver stack. This is a good idea because, of course, starvation is really horrible, and it's a threat that almost all humans who have lived before the last 100 years or so always had to sort of worry about at the back of their minds. And it's something that many people have faced throughout history. But in addition to avoiding starvation, food can be a smart investment too, because it makes you an even stronger hand when it comes to your silver. If you have some food stockpiled, you're less likely to be forced into exchanging your metal for food at a time when food prices have risen significantly. Of course, food isn't the only thing that we need to survive. We as humans have many needs, and while we can prepare for some contingencies, it's very unlikely that the average person is going to be able to predict and prepare for all possible emergencies and long-term disaster scenarios. That is the reason that having a silver stack will be very helpful in the event of SHTF. I think it's fair to say that in many of the potential SHTF scenarios that could unfold, it's quite likely that people will lose their faith in paper money. Whether due to hyperinflation or a collapse of the societal underpinnings of our economy and our way of life, humans will default back to what has always been money for thousands of years: gold and silver. And I've talked in previous videos about how humans inherently recognize gold and silver as money, and have for a long time throughout history. It's the reason that we make our coins look like silver today. Our quarters and dimes are actually made of copper, but we coat them with a layer of nickel to make them look like silver coins. Why do we do that? Because people recognize silver as money. Same thing with the Sacagawea and presidential $1 coins. These are also copper coins, but they have some manganese added to the alloy to give them a golden color. The coins are not gold, but this is a psychological ploy to encourage people to see them as having value. And that's why I'm convinced that in some sort of SHTF scenario where fiat currency has gone the way of the dodo bird, people will quickly resort to using precious metals as money. And if SHTF arrives and you're surviving the best you can, there will come a day when you need something. Could be food, could be medicine, could be a solar panel or a battery pack or a new mobile phone. Who knows? But if you need to trade for something and the local currency is no longer being accepted, if you have precious metals, you'll probably be able to procure that thing that you need, assuming it's available at all. And I suspect some people watching may raise the objection that in a post-apocalyptic scenario, you won't be able to trade safely with anyone, and you'll only be able to rely on yourself and maybe a close group of friends or family. Well, I think it's pretty fair to say that in a place like Venezuela, the crap has officially hit the fan. And yet people there still transact and the economy, mostly a black market economy, still functions after a fashion. And I know from personal accounts from friends and family that they have actually been able to use their precious metals to help them get by and meet their day-to-day needs, even after all of their savings in the bolivar were completely wiped out. And yeah, they do have to be careful trading because with their country in the grips of a hyperinflation, crime is a serious problem, and that's a good reason to have some means of protecting yourself. But that's really outside the scope of this video. One difference between what Venezuelans are facing with their hyperinflation and what a hyperinflation in the US might look like is that Venezuelans can still use the US dollar. But if the US dollar is the currency being hyperinflated, there are no substitute currencies to fall back on. The dollar is the world reserve currency. So if it goes down, they're all going down. And that's again why precious metals are so important. And of course, one last thing is that in the event of some terrible disaster or collapse or SHTF scenario, society will eventually begin rebuilding. And silver is still the second most useful commodity on the planet, right after crude oil. So what do you think will be needed for rebuilding? Just saying, silver and gold are going to hold their value far, far into the future. Probably well beyond the time that the US dollar and Bitcoin and all the fiat currencies around the world are just footnotes in history books, or whatever they use for books in the future. And that's why, even though you can't eat it, I'm still stacking silver. If you guys like this video and you're interested in the possibility of a global hyperinflation, check out my hyperinflation series playlist right here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker out.